Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. Welcome back, everyone. I have guest Birgitta Visser on with me today, and Birgitta is a soul empowerment coach. She is the founder of Power Soul Healing and the author of Becoming Authentically Me, Being the Creator of Myself, which actually just launched this month. And we are going to be talking about her book later on in the episode. So thank you, Birgitta, for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me on, Tonya.
So my listeners are in different stages of their awakening process, and I myself am a bit of a realm bridger. So if you look at my shows, they can be anything from learning how to public speak to talking about galactics and interdimensional beings. So, and today, this is exactly what we're going to be talking about. I want us to talk about the evolution of human consciousness and remembering our ancient knowledge. And I know you're a channel, you're a messenger just like me, and I receive information from my higher versions of self. And before we even tap into how to access our inner knowledge, I want you to just kind of explain, why are we here on this planet during this great awakening time, and what information have you received from your higher versions of self, your galactics, ascended masters, etc., to explain to the listeners who may not be aware that this is even happening in the world right now?
Very simple. It's really, really simple, actually. You know, we've come here because to help. We're here to remember who we are. First of all, that's the first thing, because when we incarnate, we're bushwhacked on the head and we can't remember. We come in with an amnesia, and we are confined to social conditioning. We are, we're set in the paradigms of the matrix, so to speak. I call it a terrarium, because Terra is Earth. So it's like this little.
We are, and it's like we're in a bubble.
Like that. Absolutely. But we're here. So I said, we're here to remember who we are and to return to our God self nature, and to return to a love of ourselves and each other. It's very simple. They always say, and they've hammered this into me, it's Birgitta, it's the cosmic game of evolution. So remember that very old game called the what is it? The board game of life? Yeah, it's a very old game, and you roll the dice and you go, and it's kind of like that. Your experiences are not meant to bring you down. They're meant to expand your awareness, because all this just 3D in the grid, having your job and everything, that's just to keep you in that social conditioning, right? Because you've got to live. You've got to pay your bills in order to live, so to speak.
That's Monopoly.
And for many, that's Monopoly. Yeah, exactly.
And we get to choose any game we want to play, right?
Exactly. But most people, when you come to Monopoly, right, what happens with their experiences, they remain stuck in prison.
Yes.
Right? Because
so true. And I love that you're talking about this, that it's all like a game, right? Because we have the choice to choose what game we want to play based off of our awareness and our consciousness.
And then people will ask, well, okay, what if life is like this? What if life is like this board game of life? Well, we're here to ascend, right? We're here to help Mother Earth as well, because it's like Mother Earth always says, you know what? You polluted me as much as you've polluted yourself. you don't love me because you don't love yourself. You don't respect me because you don't respect yourself. And look what you've done to the world, you know. And it's very sad because I mean, people don't realize that the earth itself, right? She is a living, conscious, breathing being like we are. She's got chakras, you know, she's got energy centers. And people just don't realize because people take the earth for granted because they themselves take themselves for granted. That's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of humanity. And to shift, you know, it's so simple. People are like, oh, well, how do we send? Up there, they're like, well, it's a shift of mindset. That's all it is. You have to shift your mindset. You have to do something different, right? Because that's your programming. And this is the thing. Do something different every single day, and stop procrastinating. You know, stop living in the grid. Well, how do we change? And people always think like for the world to change, right? They're waiting for a savior somewhere out there, some world leader or whatever. No,
you could be waiting forever on that one.
I know. You can wait till the cherry pickings, and you know you'll be waiting forever and a day, or until hell freezes over. But it's inner movement, right? It's change from within. You have to change from within. That's where it starts. And it's like when they say, people are like, yeah, but we're trying to create something new. Yeah, you can't create in the old. You have to cut off from the old, from all the old programming, which means the media, everything, because it's so much
BS
garbage, politely put.
That's what I call it, BS belief systems.
Absolutely. And that's to keep you trapped in the conditioning. And it's the same with a lot of technology, you know, this technocratic existence of phones and whatever you call these things, Kindles or iPads and everything, because everyone is just glued to them. I'm on the bloody train the other day. Honestly, every single person was on their phone or on their laptop.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is insane, actually, because I'm not that often on the train anymore to London, but it was super busy. And everyone's just absorbed within themselves. And it makes me, and I really wonder, and it's like, but, you know, we're all brothers and sisters of the light. You just don't remember that you know one another.
Exactly. And I think it reminds me of that movie Free Guy. I don't know if you've seen that with Ryan Reynolds, but it's basically about the Matrix. And when I watched that movie, it was like, wow, this is exactly what we're going through right now. And I always joke that, you know, a UFO could land right next to people and they wouldn't even see it because they wouldn't look up from their phones or their computers because they're so distracted in the world today, you know, from the conditioning, the programming, whether it be through the media, the politics, the religion, the education system, everything is contaminated, right? So it's like just, you know, learning to step back and go within, because our external world is a reflection of what our internal world is, you know, being created. And so if we are seeing the matrix in our external world, oftentimes we need to heal something internally, or we need to deprogram, you know, something internally to be able to see through the illusion or the veil, so to speak. And so you know, and Birgitta, when you receive information, you know, when I first started waking up, I think I've woken up several times and fallen back asleep. I look back, and I think many of us did. It's like, oh, we're out of the matrix, and oh, we're back in the matrix, and oh, we're back out again. And this time I was making it stick. You know, I'm like, no, I'm not going back into the matrix. And so when we talk about the matrix, and I say we say the matrix, there's many matrices that we go through, you know, because the universe is built upon them. But, you know, how do we break out of that programming? How, you know, how do we do that? And I think we are seeing more and more people doing it now. They're waking up, they're seeing the illusion for what it is. But how do you explain that? How do you explain that in your book?
Well, they talk so much about the illusion of everything, right? Because we're so gripped in, so we're very much gripped in the masculine right now, right? We're trying to balance that to more of a feminine. And there is, well, just one step back. So when we talk about everything that goes on, there is a word evil, right? But evil, when you split that word up, you get Eve and Il, so to speak.
Oh, interesting.
So Eve is the feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Il means, that's Lord Sanat Kumara um, came to me with that. He's like, it means imbalance of love and light. So evil simply means that these people are lacking the feminine and are thus imbalanced of love and light. And that's what it means. It's quite quirky, but it was quite cool. So yeah, to break away from the matrix, like I said, it's a mind shift. To ascend means it's a mind shift, and you need to heal. There's so many people going through trauma and they don't know how to move forward. But it's always a choice. Everything in life, as you know, is a choice.
Mm-hmm. And
If
it
you
puts
want
you on
to
different
change,
timelines. Mm-hmm.
it does, absolutely. And there is no right and wrong in how you choose to experience life. If you choose to remain asleep, it's fine too. But if you choose to awaken, then I always say, you know what? There are things that will bob to the surface and they're not pretty because you have to walk through your shadow sides. That's what happens when you awaken. It's not like one day to the next, you're like, oh, and I'm healed and I'm good. You know,
Well, and
you
you're
have to
never
go through the
awake.
motions.
Yeah, I think too, people are like, I'm awake, I'm awake. No, there's levels to this awakening process. It's not like just 1 minute. Oh, I'm totally enlightened and I'm totally awakened. And I think that's where some people, find it hard to, realize that there's different levels to this, kind of like Tetris, or, if we're speaking along the games, it's just moving through these different matrices.
Absolutely. But we can compare that to, I know that they do that in the book too. They compare it to like games like Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong, where you're on a level, right? And you're trying so hard to beat that level, right? And it's the same with your experiences. And it's like you're trying to beat it and it takes you like 10 times, right? Because every time you get the experience served in a different wrapping until you learn, until you reach that, until you finish that level. And Donkey Kong goes, oh, and then you go up a level. And that's the
And then
same
you've got
with
a whole
life.
new
It really
challenge.
is. Yeah. But then you got a whole new challenge. But if you tell people, like, life is everything in the cosmos. It's the cosmic game of evolution. That's what it is, because every time you attain a higher consciousness, so every time you climb the Jacob's ladder, when you understand that life is a game and it's actually an experiment to experience and to walk one another home, and to return to a love of self and others, then life becomes very different because you're not in that separation mode anymore, right? Because people live very much from the mind and from the ego, and I'm better than you and this and that, because we compare. Yep. And there should be no comparison because we're all equal. I don't give a toss what you do. I don't care where you're from. It doesn't matter. My mom always said, you put this person at that and da 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 da. I'm like, Mom, it's okay, because everyone is merely at a different level of consciousness. And when you start to shift and when you start to look at life differently, that's when things will start to change. But you have to, honestly, you have to do something different every day. And many people will go to, I'm not a big fan of Western pharmacy. Okay. I'm very much a believer in the holistic, because we're energy, right?
Absolutely.
We're energy. And anything, because we're alive in the quantum field, so to speak. I love quantum physics.
I do too.
But we're sacred geometrical designs, right? We're sacred geometrical divine beings within a designed grid, because that's how we were created. We're mathematical equations, so to speak. And people always look at me funny, like, are you out of your mind? And I'm
It's
like,
funny you say that, because binary code is ones and zeros. And yesterday I thought a one kind of looks like a male genitalia, and then the circle looks like the female genitalia. And in order to create that binary code, you have to have the masculine and the feminine, together. And so I don't know, I had that really weird revelation yesterday, because we're all
makes sense.
mathematical. Yeah.
So this is the thing, our experiences are mathematical formulations, right? And if there is an anomaly in there, we have to try and fix it. But many people don't, because they get stuck in that mismatched formula, and they they stumble on in life. And people just need to realize, like I said, experiences are not real. They really aren't. But it's been created by design to think it is, because
It's like
Tonya,
virtual
you
reality.
can. It is virtual reality, absolutely. So, we can never die. And it's just like, I mean, they hammered that into me, especially Saint Germain. It's like, Birgitta, you can't die. And the same with Anubis and the Ascended Master taught. And
it's just a
well, come on,
transference of
really
energy.
transform. Yeah, that's it. That's it. And like you and like many of the listeners, we've lived countless lives here on this planet and other planets in the multiverse, right?
Yeah.
We just don't always remember. But that's just, I think it's just amazing. It's such an amazing time to be alive, especially now, because we have a chance to right many wrongs from past civilization, especially Atlantis.
Yes.
Oh, that's a repeat. Oh my goodness, look where we are. Look where we are. And it will get better. It will get better, but it starts with us. We have to make the change. And that's something that many of the galactics have said to me. It doesn't, we are here to help humanity help themselves. We're here to help humanity, but humanity need to help themselves. And it's very true. I mean, come on, if we were given everything on a silver platter, how would we evolve?
Yeah, and not even that, Brigitte. The visual that I get is when a parent is teaching a child to walk, the parent doesn't walk for the child. They show the parent they show the child how to walk, and they may hold them up a little bit to assist, but they aren't walking for them. And then eventually the child begins to walk, and that's exactly what's happening right now. Our higher versions of ourselves, our past versions, our future versions, our parallel versions are here assisting us in the now moment here on earth to help us or assist us in ascending, in expanding our consciousness. Yeah, and our awareness, but they aren't here doing it for us. They are assisting us.
Yes.
Because how much fun would that be if they're doing it for us, right?
I know. And then I get people ask me, well, when is it going to get better? How many years do we have to wait? I'm like, yeah, that doesn't work that way. People like to put timelines on everything. And you know what? That's ridiculous. It starts with you. And when it starts with you, it has like this domino effect, right? Because it'll be one person and another person, and it has this domino effect. It's not going as quickly as we would hope. Okay.
Yeah, it's like, we've got to work on ourselves first. And then what happens is we become an example to others, because then others say, wow, you seem different. You seem like, you're living your best life. You're living the dream. You seem changed. What's going on? How do I change too? And it's literally, I don't like to use the word virus, but it's literally in a positive way, why does virus always have to be negative? We live in a world of duality. Why can't we have a positive spread of human consciousness and expansion, into the world? And so, when we dive into that inner self, that's when we learn to tap into our inner knowledge. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, how do we access that inner knowledge, whether it be from ancient Egypt or Lemuria, Atlantis, or all the way back to the beginning of the galaxy. How do we tap into that wisdom? Because I think you and I both, we receive information. I know I do. I receive it very strongly sometimes. So let's talk about that, our inner wisdom, our inner knowledge, and how do we tap into that?
It's not hard though, but there's a big but. I had to go through years of healing because it was like an onion ring. It was like, oh my gosh, I was like, you know what? Duality. I was like, oh my God, but I'm fine. I understand polarities. I'm good. And up there, I said, I've been there, done that, worn the t-shirt. And up there, they were laughing their butts off. For me, it was very much like, and that's an example, but it was really like an onion ring. So every time it was peeling back that layer, crying my eyes out and healing, and then the next one, and then the next one. So that inner knowing, and people will try to connect. I mean, there's some wonderful exercises for that, to connect to that inner knowledge and going deep down as Saint Germain always said, into the Alice in Wonderland of the wonder that is you, right? And going within the rabbit hole of yourself, because many splash in the superficial puddles rather than deep diving, connecting to the pearls of wisdom within. And it is a process, but for me, like for the channeling, after going through much trauma and wanting to heal, because you have to want it, first of all. So with the channeling, I mean, that didn't happen overnight either. It was through a workshop where I was frustrated because everyone was sitting in a circle, and I'm an antisocial kind of shitbird, right?
Observer.
I was sitting there, observer. I was sitting in a corner, sitting on a pillow, because I didn't want to be part of the clique. And so Alania Starhawk, she's amazing. She lives out in Florida. She did this meditation, right? She counted to 1, 2, 3. Heck knows where I went. And then she counted back from 3 to 1. Half an hour later, boom, I came back in the room. And everyone's like, oh, I saw the Ascended Masters, I saw the colors, I got a message, I saw the archangels. And I thought, crap, what is this? I saw nothing. And I was so upset. I was crying in a corner, and I was wiping my eyes with the sleeve of my vest. But she stated that she did one exercise, and she said, you know what? I sat down with a pad and a pen, and I just said to Spirit, I'm ready to receive. And that's all she did. Mm-hmm. And then she started writing, and that's what stuck by me. And I bolted out the door once the workshop was over, right? And went home, and I did it that night. I actually did it. And it just flowed. And people say, well, how do you know it's not your analytical mind? And I said, no, it wasn't, because it was very old English. You put that aside. And the way I did it, the way I tapped into that was by using my cards as well. So I'd pick like an archangel or an ascendant master, and I just, not using Google, okay? Yeah. I just sat with the card and I tapped into that energy, and I just wrote whatever came to me. And that's the same like with words, like divine. It's like, okay, what do you get? Or inspiration or anything like that. That's how you tap into that. But it's, instead of, we always mute that inner voice within, and we think with the mind, and it's muting that mind chatter. And people say, well, how do you do that? Because with meditation, I go nuts. If my mind still races, it doesn't matter if your mind races, it doesn't matter, but as long as you catch those thoughts. But I like to listen to 432 hertz guided meditations, and they're so powerful. And the one other thing that's really good, very, very good, and Lord Sananda, who was once Jesus, but that wasn't his last lifetime. He was another healer called Apollonius of Tijuana. And so Lord Sananda always hammers on the breath. It's so important to do breath work, because when we do, he says, when we do breath work, all right, we come to a 0 point within ourselves, and we come to such a quiet point that we go very, very deep within.
Absolutely. And what breath work does is it creates DMT in the body as well. So, and I think that's important to kind of give attention to, is that we all receive information in different ways, but it takes us giving permission first, because, for me, I have shut that on and shut it off when I want to, because working in healthcare, in grief and loss, I was around a lot of people who had passed on, and I was getting communication from the deceased, in another realm, on the other side of the veil. And it got overwhelming to me. So I shut it off, and then I ended up shutting it or turning it back on. So I think how you said you sat down and you wrote down, I want to receive information. I think that's the first part, is giving yourself and giving that higher guidance permission to come through, and then allowing it to come through in whatever way it feels comfortable, whether that's through speaking, through written word, through visuals. Like obviously the people in your group were seeing visuals where maybe you were, more in depth to speak it or write it, So not getting caught up or comparing ourselves to others, because I'm the same way. I get frustrated when, mediums come around and they're like, oh, I see this and I see that and I see this. And I'm like, I don't see anything, but I can definitely I feel everything. I can feel a presence. I can hear it, so I think it's important to just acknowledge that not to beat yourself up on how you receive information. Just give yourself permission and let it flow through freely. And I want to talk about too this morning when I like to meditate prior to my shows, because I like to receive information. And I actually received a download, from my higher self came through about this show today. And I'm just going to read it onto what came through, and then we can kind of talk about it and see, So what came through was, many of us are knowledge holders. Before we incarnate, we choose where we keep our knowledge. Our body will show us where that knowledge is hidden through discomfort and dis-ease. When we tap into that inner knowledge, it will release the pressure. The source of the pain is where we hold our knowledge. When we find the key, it opens up that knowledge and releases the pressure. The pain and discomfort draws our attention to that area for us to remember and to figure out that that's where our knowledge is stored. So we talked about trauma, right? We talked about trauma and having to heal and move through our shadow and move through all of that stuff. And what is that doing when we're releasing the trauma? It's raising our frequency. It's raising our vibration. What happens when we raise our vibration? We expand our consciousness. And when we expand our consciousness, it opens us up to new information, new ideas, new downloads, right? So it's so imperative that we work through our healing in order to get to this point. And like you said, it just didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to channel today, and, get some information. It's like, no. We need to work on some things and we need to heal them, because we need to, there's a reason why they say, oh, those emotions feel so dense. They feel so heavy. There's a reason why we say that in human, in human language. It's because it's true. Those fear, bitterness, anger, hatred, those are heavy anchored emotions that we need to process through. We need to move through them, right? To get to the higher, more light embodying emotions like joy, happiness, abundance, prosperity, love, enlightenment, all of those. So no, I like that you brought that up, because it's so imperative to deal with and work through our traumas. So
absolutely.
Yeah, let's talk about your book, Becoming Authentically Me. And what is the precipice of the book? What do you share in your book?
What do I not share? Well, first of all, do you know what's really funny? If you type in like literally the whole word "becoming authentically me," you get Michelle Obama. Okay, I'm not Michelle Obama, right? I'm on the other side of the fence. But my title is spelled differently because it's BE-COM-ING. And when I first got that from the Council of Ra, actually, the Ascended Master taught, I was like, what the heck does that mean? And he's like, well, it's you change the wording. I mean, the letters around it becomes being.com. I'm like, great. And that's like being the creation of myself. And .com is actually the suffix for worldwide companies. It's all over the world.
It's like the cosmic web.
Mm-hmm. Cosmic, yes, it is. Absolutely.
Gosh, I didn't see that. Becomingbeing.com. Okay, I see it now. And you guys will see it too when I post the name of the book, the way she has it spelled out, because I wanted to ask you, why did you spell it that way? That's very cool.
I know. I even designed the cover myself. It was that was created with the Galactic Federation of Light, and it took me a while, but I got the design right. It's all sacred geometry. But what's in there? I talk about the beginnings of the earth. I talk about the Anunnaki. I love the Anunnaki. And there's one thing, and I will say this because I channel many masters and many archangels, but people will always ask, yeah, but why? Why do they come to you? Well, they come to you when you are a channel and you're ready to receive. They come to you. There's two things. They come to you to help you heal, but they also come to you to convey messages to humanity, to whoever wants to hear it. And that's the main reason, really.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
think,
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I think too, Brigitta, is what I've noticed is depending on what frequency you tune into, those are going to be the galactics that will connect with you. So I had a friend who made a pyramid out of copper, and it was big enough for us to sit in. And so I would meditate and I would play different frequencies. And what I began to recognize is 432 hertz brought in the Andromedans, sometimes the Orions. 528 usually brought in Pleiadians. And then as I went up to like 936, you would have the Arcturians, and I would recognize different galactics coming in at different frequencies. So I began to kind of test that out and see. And during that process, I received different information coming through. Usually 528, I would connect with Lemuria. Oftentimes, I noticed maybe 432, sometimes Atlantis information would come through. So, I do encourage the listeners to mess around with frequencies, because if you are working on receiving information, it's all frequency and vibration. And so, maybe that's why you're like, why do the Anunnaki, why am I getting that information? It could be because the frequency you're tuning into, that 432 hertz, could be just tune. It's like a radio station tuning in,
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that about the radio station. This is Lord Sanat Kumara. He caught the ascension process, right? It's like remember in the 80s, like we had a radio with an antenna, and we'd have it on like, say he called it, we had it on the third dimensional frequency on the third shelf, and we're going up to fourth and fifth, right? So when you tune up, right, you put it on the fourth shelf or the fifth shelf, it will sound differently. So you need to play with the antenna to get it right.
Yeah, and it's like the higher the frequency, the more clearer the information gets almost. It's like, or more specific or precise, maybe is the word I'm looking for, and I was way up into the 1111 hertz, and I was archangels and Michael and Gabriel, all of them, Raphael and Sandalphon. And I was like, whoa, but I could feel it in my body. It was like every hair on my, my body was standing up, and my third eye was just pulsating. And so, just messing around. And you don't need a pyramid to do this, guys. I'm just kind of sharing my experience, but you can listen to the rock.
I've got pyramid above my bed, or octahedron. And and I've got little pyramids in the four corners of my bed. But I love pyramids.
I do too. And I think when you tune into the sound frequency along with the sacred geometry, and then you resonant tune, like you try to hum to it or ohm to it or tune, that is when it gets extremely powerful, at least in my experience. It's like, and that's what the Egyptians used to do with the Ankh. They use the Ankh as like kind of like an antenna or a it's like a frequency transmitter, similar to the obelisks when you see them around pyramids and sacred sites. They're all frequency transmitters. They bring in so I think sacred geometry just amplifies things even stronger. And then you add a few crystals in there and woohoo,
I did find that with my sound bowls, because all my crystal bowls that I got, I need to get an alchemy bowl as well next week. But when I play them, it's like I can do the light language. Without them, I'm like a spluttering car, right? But with that, I can do the toning. It's very strange, but I love it. And I did it for my friend the other week. The first time, she's in the US, and she couldn't even talk after that. She's like, I'm just blown away. She's like, I don't even know what to think of this, because this is just, powerful.
It is, and sound is so healing. And I mean,
Yep.
we were created on sound. If it goes all the way back to the beginning of time, sound and light, and so we have lost that ancient knowledge of how to heal through sound and how to heal through light. And our
Yep.
voice is a huge transmitter of sound. And when we can resonate tune, I know when I speak light language, oftentimes it's in different frequencies, and it's based upon the person I'm working with and what they resonate with. And so it's like I automatically tune in to their frequency, and you using the sound bowl is exactly what you're doing. You're tuning into that frequency, and that frequency can heal, because our bodies are roughly, anywhere between 60 to 80% water, depending on how old we are.
Yep.
And we know that sound affects water. If you look at Dr. Emoto's work and,
Yes.
somatics, all that stuff. So, it's fascinating. And I love that you're into sacred geometry and, all of that. Do you talk about that in your book? Do you talk about all of that stuff too?
Yep, I talk about that. I talk about that quite a bit, actually. And not only that, I also discussed that the archangels, because it's very funny, because people think they're winged beings, so to speak, but the wings only came in medieval times.
Mm-hmm.
And
Actually,
Archangel
light being.
Raphael,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they are. Yeah, absolutely. But they were like, Archangel Raphael actually came to me. He's like, well, Brigitta, well, I'll tell you what archangel means. I'm like, okay, then. And he actually did. It's quite a funny story, because I used to pole dance, right? And I did that for quite some months. I really enjoyed it, but I ripped all the
Which is
muscles
a heck of a
in
workout,
my
I'm
upper
gonna say.
body. Oh, I was in pain, couldn't breathe. And he's like, Brigitta, you channel what the meaning of archangels. I'm gonna help heal you. Well, actually, he did. So I channeled archangels. And when you split the word up, you have arc, right? Arc is a spacecraft or a spaceship or whatever you want to call that. H will stand for the heavens, and angels are celestial beings of the heavens, right? So they're star seeds. They were once star seeds
That have ascended.
and many,
Yeah.
many of them were Anunnaki. And but they have ascended now. They're not the highest vibrational beings in the multiverse, but many of them are in my book. And I love Archangel Michael. He's like a Jack lad to me. You can have a beer with, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? I don't drink beer, but yeah.
You can
For
feel,
some
I don't know
people,
about you, but I can feel who it is before I
yeah,
even know. Like when Michael comes in, it's just this stoic, courageous kind of energy, where then Raphael is a little bit softer of a healing energy. Sandalphon, I've actually used Sandalphon to clear land.
yeah,
Yeah. So there's a book called Archangel Magic, which I love. And it taught me how to kind of connect with them more in a way.
yeah,
So I like you, I love working with them, because when they come in a room, I've actually been in the room with a client, and it's like their hair is like, whoosh, and I'm like, oh, here's Michael, and they're like, who just stepped in the room, and they're crying, and I'm like, actually, I think it could be a couple of them, so it's kind of funny when you call upon them, and we have the power to command them, because we are divine beings. And someone told me that we have a bunch of angels who are retired, just waiting for us to call upon them. And I've been working with them a little bit more. I thought that was hilarious, because I'm like, wait, they're just retired, just hanging out like at the beach, like, whatever, on another planet, whatever. And they're like, yeah, you can just call upon them. They're waiting to assist. And there's an infinite number of them, and I loved that. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to start working with my retired angels.
I call them, there are many unemployed angels.
Unemployed. Maybe that's the word, unemployed. I think that's super awesome.
So they're in my book as well. But I also discussed that there is no death, duality. There's a message, because I also introduce Archangel Michael. I talk about the shift in consciousness and everything that's been happening in the past 2 years, especially with COVID and stuff like that. And Saint Germain, don't get me started, because he's hilarious. He's funny. He takes the mick out of life, but he does have a serious undertone. But just the way he talks, he's so funny. and the way that they bring in songs, or like, they bring in Marvel figures, or they bring in Star Wars, and yeah, I've also channeled Archangel Samuel, who's actually Lucifer, but he's the builder of civilizations, throughout the multiverse.
Okay,
And
I
he's
just
just
felt a
been
hand
missing.
on my head right here. Like whichever one, I don't know which one it was, but it was like, that's funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just felt the
Don't
hand.
worry about it. I don't mind. I think that's kind of cool.
It is
But
cool. And that's how they show up. And I love it because it is through song, through synchronicities, maybe numbers, animals, spirits, that. I've even had them blast angelic music on my soundbar on my television at 3 a.m. and woke me straight up out of bed, straight up out. They've thrown crystals across the room. They have, and I know it's not some people are like, how do you know that's not an evil spirit or entity? Because I'm laughing, because I feel joyful. I feel like a kid. It feels like a loving, caring energy. And I think once you tune into your clairsentience, which is that feeling of energy around you, you begin to recognize what energy doesn't feel good and what energy feels good. And now I can kind of sense, which one it is, that's coming in. But it's funny that you say that, because once you work with them, they're extremely funny. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And very literal sometimes. You're like, really? That's all it is?
Yeah.
It's so simple.
No,
But yet our
because
human minds are making it really complex,
I know it's like Archangel Samuel will say, he said in my book, I was laughing because I'm on my own writing here. He's like, yeah, I'm I'm the no, I'm the Joker to your peeing Batman. Yeah.
And you're just like, and I think they do speak to us in a way that we relate, because it could be very different for each and every one of us, but they tune into how we would, relate, or we would see the synchronicity, or we would understand that,
Absolutely.
if you're into feathers, then they'll show feathers, like white feathers
Yeah.
everywhere, or whatever. If you're into butterflies, they'll show butterflies, it really is. And you can communicate that to them. And this is what I share with my clients is, if you want to communicate with those in other realms, dimensions, the other side, the veil, whatever you want to call it,
Yep.
you tell them how you want them to communicate with you, and
You
that's how
do.
they will. If it's just their straight, mind speak in your mind, intuition, telepathy, then so be it. If you want them to drop pennies out of the sky, I have a
They
woman.
do. They
Yeah,
do.
they do. I have a woman whose daughter passed away, and she has pennies falling out of the sky all the time in front of her. But that was something they discussed before she passed, so it really is up to us to communicate. And I would suggest writing it down, like we talked about earlier. Say it out loud, because that's a frequency, and then write it down. And that's really solidifying it, like, okay, I want Archangel Michael to communicate with me by showing me rainbows, or, whatever you want,
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned this. I talk that's well, I also talk about manifestation in my book, right? You create what you think, but people always say that I want this in my life. No, no, no. This is not how you create. You manifest by already having achieved your goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you need to visualize it. And then you take the steps, but you need to write it down. And it really, really works because, your energy, and this is something they hammer on in my book, even through, because my book is split in two, right? So it's the first part is the shifting human consciousness. I actually go back to Antarctica, Second World War, and I compare a lot of things, and there's a lot of Q&A on the transformations in government. So don't even get them started, because they were and they will come with words like, especially the Ascended Master taught, that I had to look up because I didn't know these legal terminologies. And I was like, oh, you know what? I need to look it up. No, you need to keep writing. Look it up later. So I did. But then the second part talks about my life and everything that I have been through and all the trauma that I've been through since a kid, and that cascaded into my adult life. And so I talk about that very openly. I even talk about the fact that many women suffer from vaginismus, which is caused through often childhood trauma or something that happened later in life. and it causes difficulty in their sexual life. And so I never knew what was wrong with me until I was 39. But I'm happy on my own. But the thing is, it's filled with like the stuff like because I was abused in the modeling industry as well. When I used to starve myself, that's the only way I could take it out of myself and be in control,
Self-sabotage.
even though yeah, self-sabotage. And I mean, I worked my socks off. You could put me in the desert, I'm like a chameleon. I will always find work.
Uh-huh.
And so there's a lot about there about addiction. I mean, I dabbled in drugs as well. I could have killed myself when I was younger, when my dad passed away in 1988, so a long time ago. But he's fine. He's a multidimensional gatekeeper, so I
Uh-huh.
sometimes see him. Um, and then my stepdad in 2000. So I do channel him. I channel two of my best friends that crossed over, and they give their account of what life is actually all about. And then it was their choosing, because everyone is responsible for their own life. You need to take accountability for your life. And it's so important, because if you keep playing the victim, well, good luck to you. You're going to stay where you are. It's like you'll be cemented in that toxicity because you choose to, right?
Yeah, and it's a frequency, it's a rhythm, and if you get stuck in that rhythm, then the only way to get out of it is to create a new rhythm, right? And so if you're in that rhythm of victim consciousness all the time, this is the song you're playing, a real sad country song all the time, your whole life. Oh, woe's me, woe's me, woe's me. No, turn it off. Put on some solfeggio frequencies and listen to 528 hertz. Like, raise your vibration.
Absolutely. But it's so hard for people to do that, because it's like, oh, no, I have to change. But it's like, no, I don't want to change because I'm so comfortable in the discomfort of myself. Why would I want to change? Well, then stop moaning. So this is something they really hammer on as well. And I talk about depression and Archangel Michael. Actually, it's a Q&A with Archangel Michael. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You really, well, I didn't put it like that, but I said, in the sense, well, you really put it on very thick here, right? You look at depression from all angles. It's like, well, that's great, because you can sum it up in a few words. You've shot your mind to hell.
Yeah, and it's all a mindset. It really is. Whether you're stuck in a rhythm or you're stuck in depression or anxiety, it's been a continuous loop pattern. Could go back past lives. I mean, oftentimes, right? It could go back generational patterns. And, many of us are here like, how do I defeat depression when it's gone back 500 lives, and you're like, okay, well, it's all quantum and it's all energy, right? So it's like diving into that. And once we learn that, it's like, poof, we can get that to go away and to move through that. And if we can call upon the archangels to assist, that's even better, because then we're like, oh, take this burden from me. I didn't sign up to carry my, 500th grandmother's depression. That's no, I'm not here. I signed up to heal the trauma of my family line, but also to assist in my own spiritual awakening and to, ascend into higher, expansions of consciousness, because that's exciting and that's fun. But we had to heal the trauma first, when we signed up for this lovely, video game that we're all in.
Yeah. So just to finish quickly, I mean, I talk about mental health with Saint Germain, which is quite deep. But I also talk about many of my past lives, because I had to heal up. And, we often don't see it, but I mean, I've always been in toxic relationships, and I've only had a few, right? And I always say, people are like, I've been on my own since early 2015, and people are like, how do you do that? I'm like, what do you mean, how do I do that? Don't you miss it? No. And I really say in my book, well, I don't care if I'm a born again virgin. Who cares? I'm happy and I'm whole within myself. I don't need to feel the holes in my Swiss cheese, so to speak, with someone else. This is the thing. You have to learn to love yourself first. It's so important, because people will dive into so many toxic relationships. Mea culpa, because I've done it
Yeah.
every single time and I wouldn't learn. And they're like, oh, great, she didn't learn. Well, we're going to give her a more difficult experience, right? Until I got so exasperated and I had my life threatened by the Cribs in Holland. And because my ex was a crack addict. Well, I had no idea about drugs. So I was, I was dragged into a world, and I did save his life, actually, I did. But I was always trying to fix broken birds, whereas I was a broken bird too. I needed to fix
Exactly. And that's
myself.
why we attract the broken birds, because we haven't worked on ourselves. And I think people think it's more difficult to be alone because you're like, I don't want to dive into the healing. I don't want to deal with my pain or my emotions. But the reality is the more people you have in your life, the more you will be triggered to heal
Yes.
yourself, because whether you're doing it alone or you're doing it in the company of others, either way, you're being moved through, the healing process. And I like you, I have been single for probably since 2015, 16, probably as
Yeah.
well. And I'm okay with that. I love that. And I love, because I know I am healing myself, I'm raising my frequency.
Yes.
And when that right person in my life is meant to be with me, we will naturally attract, because we both healed and we'll both be on that similar level where I'm like, why do I want to attract someone when I'm still going through my healing, my deep healing process? Now, we're always going to be healing something, it's not like you've healed and you're done, but we're always going to be expanding and growing. But, I want to attract someone into my life who's on my same level, who's on that same plane. And so, yeah, I think it's funny you say Swiss cheese. I've always called it Swiss cheese aura. My whole, the whole time I'm like, oh, it's our Swiss cheese aura. We have these big holes in our auric field. Cheddar is better, whatever. I like to refer to cheese for some reason.
Yeah, me too. That's why I always refer to the soul as cheese, right? Because, and that is the thing. When people are together, I talk about my sister as well, bless her. We're not in touch, but she's been such a beautiful reflection in my face, so to speak. And she's a perfect example of leaving one toxic relationship and diving into another without healing herself. So she attracted that. She's married to this person, and they're both as toxic as one another, and they keep pulling each other down. But to her, he's the love of her life, and for him, it's the love of her life. But it's a conditioned love, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. If you don't learn to love yourself first, how can you ever love another?
So true. And, she's learning a lesson at this point.
Yeah.
She signed up for this on a soul level.
Yes.
There's something she's moving through, as well as her
Absolutely.
partner, and I think that's, that it's just, I always say, mind your own business, stay in your own vibration, so it's like, everybody's going through our own healing journeys. We're all going through our own little lessons here on earth in this lovely earth school. And it's like we're moving through. And so, Birgitta, this has been an amazing conversation. And I know we could probably talk even longer, but I do try to keep my
Yes.
shows between 30 and 60 minutes. So where can people, first of all, find your book, and where can they connect with you if they want to, reach out?
So, my book can be found on Amazon, of course, worldwide. And you can find me on Facebook on Universal Light Warriors, which you know.
Yes.
And I'm on Instagram also now on the Universal Light Warriors. And then I have my website, www.powersoulhealing.com.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, this has been so fun and so exciting and so high frequency. I love that. I love having these conversations about galactics and archangels and, star seeds and all of that. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate your energy. I appreciate all of the work that you've done on your book and being able to put this out there into the world to assist people, in their own awakening journey, and to be able to see what you've gone through and hopefully resonate with that. I send so much energy to you and your book and your business, and that it's going to help a lot of people out there who are going through these ever-changing times. So thank you, Birgitta.
That's right. Can I say one more thing very quickly? Yeah. so I didn't write the book for me. This was really to help awaken humanity. That's exactly why I wrote it. And it's a piece of the puzzle to life. And it's merely to plant, what I call it, to plant a food for thought seed. Whether you nurture it or not, that's entirely up to you.
It is. And I always say I'm no longer a star seed, I'm a star sprout. I might be a star plant pretty soon because I've been really working on myself.
I like that.
we're moving on up, right? We're moving on
yes.
up. Thanks, Birgitta. You have an excellent day. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You too. Thank you, Tonya.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.